Good evening. On behalf of Levine Museum of the New South and our sponsor, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, I want to welcome you to this evening, What is it going to take? An Author Talk. My name is Kama Pierce, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the museum. In the beginning of the summer, when what has become a movement started with the death of George Floyd, the museum staff got together and we started asking ourselves, what is it going to take to commit to real change? And this series came out of that conversation. And I am so excited because tonight we actually have an author talk around a very important book and a very important story. At Levine Museum, we like to tell everyone's story, and tonight we have a magnificent storyteller. So let me begin by first introducing our moderator for the night. He is a friend of the museum. He is a great figure in our community, William Teddy McDaniel. He's the president and chief executive officer of the Urban League of Central Carolinas in Charlotte. If you're not familiar with the Urban League and their mission, they advocate for and equip African Americans and all clients with the tools to achieve social and economic equality. Teddy holds a BA in finance from Morehouse and is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Now, it's this Morehouse connection and this Alpha connection that brought Teddy into my life personally. You will know in the African American community, when it comes to HBCUs or our Divine Nine, it is a small world. And it is also this Morehouse brotherhood that connects Teddy to our author tonight. And so he is the appropriate person to sit down with Bakari Sellers tonight. Bakari has written this book, My Vanishing Country, that is available on our website if you haven't gotten it yet, but I hope you read it by now. It is wonderful. And as you see with Bakari's shirt, he is also a Morehouse man. Bakari made history in 2006 when at just 22 years old, he unseated a 26-year incumbent to sit on the South Carolina state legislature. And he was the youngest African-American elected at that time. He has been named on numerous lists like Times 40, Under 40, the Roots 100 Most Influential African Americans, and he currently practices at Strom Law Firm, and he is a political commentator at CNN. And my connection to Bakari is also, I'm a parent of twins, and he has, as you see one of them with us right now.
My wife drags her out the screen. He loves the camera. I wonder where he got that from.
I don't know where he got that from. These two men are wonderful figures in our community, and they are also married to two different but very dynamic women raising wonderful families. And we are just so honored to hear your story, hear your opinions, and kind of eavesdrop into this conversation. So you all didn't come to listen to me, so I'm going to say goodnight and have a great conversation. And thank you for doing this for us.
Sure. Thank you, Kama Pierce, and the Levine Museum of the New South. We're excited to have a little conversation tonight. Bakari, welcome.
I am doing the best I can do. I have 19-month-olds that are running around behind me.
I have two daughters. They're young.
I have that was Stokely, who we saw earlier, and Sadie is right here. And my wife's like, don't put either one of them on camera.
Okay.
So I'm trying
they're your special assistants. That's what they
just got done with dinner, so it's all over their shirts and their hair.
Yeah.
And doesn't want all of Charlotte seeing my children without their pristine look.
It's all right.
So anyway, they may join us, just the FYI.
No worries. So let's talk about the book. So it's great book, a memoir, cultural analysis, My Vanishing Country. And I wanna get into some of your background in the rural South. Like that, that's an interesting piece, right? Let's start there. And I'll frame the first question around an acronym, because after reading the book, first of all, people said, read this book. It's a short read. It's good. The truth is, it took me a long time to finish your book.
Yeah, and I don't like when people say it's a short read.
Well,
it's accessible. It's easy. It's
that's right. It's an easy read. It wasn't because it was 1,000 pages. It was just so much depth. And so I had to reread a few paragraphs or chapters. But the first acronym is HSW. That stands for hospitals, schools, water. Okay. And you talk a lot about, it's a theme throughout, the struggles of rural areas, lack of basic amenities that Bamberg County is home, right? In Denmark, they still lack that. I want you to talk about that. And I frame the question in the fact that it's not different than low-income urban communities, right? Like,
let's frame.
Maybe it's not, but talk about that.
Let's frame the question a little differently, because it is, and a part of the reason is because when you talk about the poor rural South, when you talk about these rural areas in Alabama, when you talk about them in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, many times the urban areas of Mecklenburg County, the urban areas of even Richland County, the urban areas of Fulton County are oftentimes separated from these very isolated areas where we don't have the necessary resources. And what does that mean? That means that in these areas where many of our, I find it somewhat hilarious when the city folk, and it's usually not in Charlotte, but the city folk who are in New York or Chicago or Detroit, Philadelphia, they always like to, give me their brunch ideals, right? And I'm like, but nah, yeah, like your parents and grandparents were from Mississippi, they were from South Carolina,
They
south.
Were from,
Exactly, right? Exactly. And so I grew up in a town called Denmark, which was 9 miles away from a town called Norway. And in between Denmark and Norway were two small unincorporated towns called Finland and Sweden, right? And when you think about that, and I remind myself often that I grew up in a city that was a food desert, where we lived in a country. So we didn't live in the city limits, we lived in a country. Behind my home was a cotton field. We would rotate. So we would have cotton and soy. And for those watching who understand cotton, they know that cotton is like a crop on steroids. It sucks so much out of your soil. So you couldn't do cotton back to back. So we would do cotton, we would do soy, we would do corn. So we wouldn't have too many fruits, but that would kind of be the rotation, right? Yep. So you could replenish the soil. But the food desert means that you go 2-3 miles. I think that's the definition, USDA definition, without access to fresh fruits and vegetables. We lived along the corridor of shame, where kids go to school where their heating and air don't work. In 2010, I was in People magazine and Time magazine the same week. The unique part about me being in People magazine, Time magazine, 40 under 40, People magazine, was they were profiling schools that were still falling apart. And the day before I went into the primary school a mile down the road from my house, the cafeteria roof collapsed. That's where my little people go to school.
Right.
Had Hillary Clinton there in 2016. And she was there doing a campaign trail. And it was just, if you go back and look at it, I took her back and took her to see some of the bathrooms that were in that school. And they literally had boy, girl written, like handwritten on the doors.
Wow.
That's the community I grew up in. The water is not potable. It's just it's an interesting time. It's a throwback. And so while we want to compare, and I am pushing back on your question, because there aren't the similarities between rural blacks and urban blacks. They're vast. The similarity that we do have some of the same traits, some of the same characteristics, some of the same culture. However, the way that we've been treated through our capitalistic expansion in this country is vastly different.
Yeah. So I said to myself, the double earthquake, right? So you got, because you even mentioned like the effect of NAFTA in your book and how it destroyed your community. So from a policy standpoint, what kind of things do we need to be advocating for today to change that? I know.
I mean, that's a
I know.
That's a tough question. I mean, there are a lot of things. So
well, let's start with water, because what we now know from reading is Flint's not the only place.
Well, Flint's not the only place, and Flint is one of 100 cities that look like it. There are 100 cities that have a higher lead concentration than Flint, Michigan. So Flint's by far not the only place. So that's that is and people in Flint are tired of you talking about the water in Flint because they view themselves as whole human beings. And they're like, let's talk about building a whole individual, not just the water. That's tough. I mean, my number one political issue is African-American female mortality. I mean, the way that we evaluate politics is the way that it affects us. And so the reason that you had Kamala Harris and Joe Biden yesterday talk about COVID-19 as they were unveiling themselves is because of the fact that COVID-19 affects us all. And people may say, I don't know anybody that's died. Well, okay, cool. But you do know people unemployed. Well, I don't know anybody unemployed. Okay, well, that's fine too. But maybe you're a college football fan. Oh, well, I am a college football fan. Well, we're not having that this year because of COVID-19. So the way that our politics affects us or the way that we adjudicate the politics that's most important to us is the way that it affects us. And for me, African-American female mortality is my number one political issue, just simply because of what my wife went through giving birth to our twins and nearly dying. And so I don't want families to have to go through that. That's first. Second is my experience and growing up, water, education. But all of these things fall under one umbrella, which I outline in the book, which is systemic and institutionalized racism. This isn't anything that's new. We've been in this country 401 years. And for people who think that this is just about Ahmaud Arbery or George Floyd, and for those of us who have the wherewithal to make sure that we include Breonna Taylor, it's not just about those things. It's about the totality of the circumstances. It's about the cultural and historical implications of being enslaved, going through slave codes, going through violence, going through lynchings, going through codified Jim Crow, redlining, criminal justice systems, mass incarceration. I mean, the water systems, quarters of shame. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Now we're here. So you asked me a very big question that I can't answer probably in the time that's given.
All right. No worries. So we've talked about what you call the forgotten South. So you mentioned history, and I want to go back towards the beginning of the book to talk about the Orangeburg Massacre. So I've got to bring it up, and I'm asking the question on how it relates to recent racial unrest. In '68, it was 3 students killed and 28 wounded, all unarmed. And of course, we're dealing with all of these cases now. Same thing. So one question that's interesting. You put in there that there are people there. So much pain that they say don't say their names, and of course with Breonna Taylor and others, we always are saying say their name. So can you talk about that the Orangeburg Massacre, how it relates? Because I still think that not enough people know enough about it.
So I mean that's a couple of questions, and I'll answer the last one first because that's the one that is kind of in my how when you live a life and what your trigger points are, other people do not. And so the Orangeburg Massacre is always something that creates this, I talked to my therapist about this, but something that creates a feeling in my stomach or belly that causes me to emote. And so for me, the Orangeburg Massacre, it's not the fact that my father was shot, right? It's not that he was shot in the shoulder. It's not that he was shot along with 28 others. It's not that 3 young men were killed, Henry Smith and Samuel Hamlin, and Delano Middleton, none over the age of 19. It's not that my father was shot and actually arrested. And it's not the fact that his bond was denied. It's not the fact that in between the time of his arrest and the time of his trial, all the officers were found not guilty who fired shots into the group of students that night. It's not the fact that my father actually went to prison and his indictment was backdated from February 8th to February 6th. It's not the fact that he actually went to prison and was the only person to go to prison as a result of that night's violence. None of those are the big sins that I refer to, because my biggest issue that I have is that we simply don't know about it, and those lives are in vain. And so when I think about this, I remember those families of the three young men, and I live for them every day. For me, it's not just my father's sacrifice, but it's all those sacrifices of the people who we don't remember, of the people we don't know. And we know Kent State, right? But we don't know Orangeburg. And so for me, that is probably one of the more difficult things that we have to live through. And my job is to make sure my father's sacrifices and the sacrifices of individuals like him are not in vain.
Yep.
The Orangeburg Massacre is a date that we should know more about. But again, the way that we understand our history, the way that we are taught our history, the way that we teach others our history is something that we have to do a better job of, for sure.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. So, all right, let's I'm gonna switch up a little bit. Well, let's talk about what I'm gonna call your political laboratory, and I'm gonna talk a little bit and put my hat on. Let's talk about Morehouse. So you go down there, and you had to run for SGA president. You go through this 3 or 4 times. It was amazing and fascinating to read this. But it really kind of sets you up. And I thought, like, all right, I gave you the confidence. Now I'm gonna go do this big stuff as soon as I'm out. And so that happens. Talk about after your internship, you graduate, and now I'm gonna run against a longtime incumbent right out of college.
Yeah, I mean, so at Morehouse, they always teach us that they place a crown above our heads for us to grow up into. And so shout out to all the Howard graduates that are watching this today, because y'all are really insufferable right now.
Agreed. We got love.
No, it's a lot. The Howard grads between McCord Maker, the five-star basketball player who decided to go to Howard, to Kamala Harris, who's one of my nearest and dearest friends.
They're on a good run. Yeah,
they're on a good run. They just got $40 million from an endowment recently too, so they are good. They are doing So HU is doing great work right now, and so they're letting us know. So shout out to Howard University and other HBCUs. Morehouse had always taught us to place a crown above our heads for us to grow into, and going into an institution like that, it was the best and brightest of the best and brightest. And whether or not it was Julian Bond, or whether or not it was when you think about the Maynards and the David Satchers, the Edwin Moseses, the Samuel L. Jacksons, the Martin Luther King Juniors. I mean, the list is long and lengthy. I never would have imagined that one of the highlights of my life, though, was had to be in maybe 2010 or 2012, actually being one of the notable alums from Morehouse College. I mean, that's
saying something.
Yeah, that puts you in a different type of stratosphere mentally. For me, it makes sure that you keep going every day, and you got to do more. You got to live up to that. And so Morehouse was an amazing experience. It was the best 4 years of my life. The unique part about me going to Morehouse, though, which when people read the book, they're kind of taken aback about, is that I went to Morehouse at 16. That's right. So I was in every club in Buckhead that you could possibly imagine. My college ID. There was no question about it.
You had a lot of fun those first couple years, huh?
Oh yeah, but no. You gotta work your way through it. I was a baby though, so my brother, who Cleveland, Sellers III, and my sister, Bakari Sellers, they, 8.5, 10 years older than me. So they always were like, Mom, Dad, what are y'all gonna do with this little kid who is, thinks he knows it all? And my parents were like, we tired, he gonna be
right. You're the third one. Right.
He gonna be all right. So I lost my academic scholarship not once but twice, which takes a skill. You can't lose if you lose academic scholarship twice.
That's tough. The second time.
Yeah. So we did that, and I had to figure my way out, and I graduated Morehouse with like a 2.86 GPA.
Yeah.
I tell all young people that.
That's called thank you, Lottie, right? Not Kuma and all that. It's thank you, Lottie.
So I'll tell you my funny story. When I don't think this is in the book. It might be,
okay.
But
all right.
It's crazy because I can't even. I mean, it was written.
Come on, man. We got to hear the Morehouse stories.
So I'll never forget. It was raining during our graduation.
Okay.
Judge Hatchett was our graduation speaker.
Okay.
I did not choose Judge Hatchett. I love her. Everybody watching, I love her, but she wasn't my choice.
All right.
But you let the senior. I was SGA president.
That's right. Yeah, you had to speak that day. You're SGA president.
But you let no, you don't speak. You let the senior class. The senior class president handles all of that. Your job is homecoming, everything else. Okay. So the senior class president, plans all of this. We had these huge parties on. We graduate on Sunday morning.
Yep.
Is it Saturday morning? We graduate on Saturday morning.
It's early and it's
8 a.m. 8 a.m. Saturday morning. Graduate Saturday morning. Spelman graduates on Sunday. We graduate on Saturday morning.
That's right.
So I'll never forget we went to the club. We were at the Copelands, which it doesn't exist anymore. But
it's closed.
Where our big party was. We were partying all night. I went home and I said, you know what? I'm gonna take a nap. I had the whole house full of people. Some of my homeboys from college, because from FAM, from Howard, Hampton, everybody down there sleeping on the floor. Sure. My roommate Jared, who I love and adore, we were just on a business call together. We just went to vacation together. He was there. He graduated with me. So the house we have 2 condos side by side, 3 and 3 best friends, 6 of us total. 5 of them left and went to. We had to since graduation was at 8. We had to be there by 6.
Right, line up.
They all left the house when they left me sleep.
They didn't say, "Where's Bakari? Let's go."
I woke up about 8:15, 8:20. Graduation had already started on graduation day. I had missed like 52 calls. My mama was.
Oh man!
So I'm the SGA president, so I throw on the same suit I had on yesterday because that's all I can find. I got stuff all over the floor. I wake up like, oh my God, I literally wake up like 8:15, 8:20. So I drive, I hop in my Tundra, I'm pushing it down 485, come around. I throw my car up on the corner on Fair Street by the back gate because that's where the graduation was. Running. And I run through, and they knew I was SGA president, and everybody was looking for me. They've been looking for me for 2 hours. They thought they probably had put out an APB. They didn't know what happened. Right. So I threw my keys to the officer. Was like, man, if you got to move it, you got to move it. And I ran down. I sat down in my chair probably about 10 minutes before they called my name.
What about that? My goodness.
If they would have called my name before I got there, I don't Gwen and Cleve would have disowned me. But that's we had fun. We had that just tells you we had a lot of fun in Morehouse, and every single day I live my life to make sure that the guys who came before me are proud and the guys who come after have something to look up to.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Same here. So great experience. So you mentioned it gave you confidence, and you mentioned your mental. And so I want to break off a little bit because one of the things that I really got out of this book was your chapter on anxiety. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we're in this place now where at least in some aspects, mental health, especially with Black males, are being talked about. In a lot of areas, we still kind of, in the Black community, we pray it away. It's not going to work. It's just, you got to get the assistance you need. But like you even put in here, failure is a small death. So I thought that was a powerful thing to say. But can you talk about the importance?
Read the whole sentence though.
So it says, I fear death. I also fear failure, which I see as a sort of a small death. When you're Black and from the South, failure affects more than you. That's 2 sentences. Can we read some more?
Yeah, read a little bit more.
All right. For those
I felt these sentences when I wrote them.
Yep. For those of us who've been fortunate enough to escape or leave the proverbial traps and have a platform to affect others, failure is not just letting ourselves down, but letting down our parents, our communities, the church ladies. I'm letting down those people I'm carrying the torch for, those who want to go to college but couldn't, and those ancestors who died, and all those who bled, sweated, and toiled.
That's right. So
yeah,
for me, what I tried to do was talk about the anxiety, in a sense, of the way that I feel it in my chest in the mornings. When you run for office, you get those knots in your stomach. For me, I talked about failure in a very real way.
Yeah.
Because those are my two fears. I fear death and failure, and they're so intertwined. That anxiety, it drives me. It's palpable. It's something you cope with, but it allows me the opportunity to make the most of every 24-hour period. And so what I wanted people to know, and I've gotten more like private chats and DMs from people that I interact with about that chapter than anything else.
That's good.
You
just call it the Black man superpower.
Because you have to be able to utilize it. And one of the things I wanted Black men in particular to know is that you don't just have to talk to barbers, right?
Right.
You can talk
our country club, but yeah, they're professional.
Who has a few initials behind their names. You can find a partner like I have in Ellen. You can do all those things necessary to make sure that you're strong, because at the end of the day, there are two things. If you're not stronger mentally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, if you're not stronger now than you were before COVID, then you have to make sure that that's your goal. And if you're not physically and mentally healthy, then you're no good to the movement. So I try to make sure I focus on those things.
Good. No, I appreciate that. The more we can talk about that, the better. So let's go back to you run as a 22-year-old, fresh out of college, and have this incredible run and beat a 20+ year incumbent. And you start making waves. It was amazing. You just working, you at law school, all that stuff, trying to get through, and then you go to this historic run, right? Like I'm gonna not run again from my house seat, and I'm gonna run for lieutenant governor. So talk to us about you already had courage, and it was interesting to hear Clyburn and others say, "What are you doing? Like, if you could, if it was easy to do, I would have done it already."
Yeah, no.
And I kind of said, "Well, he went to Morehouse," but anyway, talk to us about the lieutenant governor run.
It was tough, man. I put everything I had into that race.
Yeah.
I still remember it. I still wish I would have won that race. Life would have been totally different. It would have just kind of transformed. It would have transformed the country, really, if I would have won the race. I mean, you think about it. I would have been lieutenant governor. Nikki Haley would have been governor. With Nikki Haley, you have been, UN ambassador. What would have juggled and shifted, I think about those things often, but I left it all out there. And I remember that I chipped away at the glass ceiling. I mean, I talked to Andrew about this often, Andrew Gillum often. I talked to Stacey Abrams often, Beto often. In 2014 when I ran, there weren't many Black folk running for statewide office.
Right.
And we got 43% of the vote in South Carolina. And then you had Andrew Gillum run after that, who did better, and Stacey, who did better, and Beto, who did better. And so hopefully Jamie Harrison and Ralph Warnock and others will be able to finally shatter that glass. And so for me, it was just it was an awesome experience. I had been, it's wild though, Teddy. When I think about it and look back at it, I'm like, look, I'm 35 years old, right? I'm not old by any stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I fully retired, invested and retired from the state retirement system.
Think about that.
I've done that. Like I served, a full 8 years in the General Assembly. I run a full campaign for lieutenant governor. I was the youngest person, youngest Black elected official ever in South Carolina, youngest person ever nominated for a statewide office. I've done those things. And, now I just look back on those things and realize how blessed I truly was. And, understand that introspection. I'm itching to get back into public service, but
yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, I mean, you were a little bit before your time, and now you mentioned Stacey Abrams and these other races, and I saw a statistic yesterday where across America, 90% of elected officials are white.
Yeah, that's. I mean,
think about that, right? And 95% of prosecutors are white. I mean, we still got a long way to go when it comes to Black representation.
Well, let me harp on the last one, because as you know, I don't know if people watching know, I'm extremely close with Kamala Harris.
Yep.
And I've been in many a courtroom where the only Black people in there were me and my client. I even got stopped one time recently. I was in Pickens County, and the bailiff told me that only defendants were allowed this far, and I was like, "Just don't wear suits like this, Daddy." Like,
right.
Like, what you talking about, man? Like,
yeah.
I'm part of the I'm a lawyer.
Like I know.
He was an 80-year-old white man who was there, 70-year-old white man who was there as a bailiff, and he just had a blind spot, which a lot of us do.
Yeah.
And so I am talking about prosecutors. I recognize the value of having people of color on that side, and I'm glad Kamala was on that side. We need more people on that side. And as I go through my life and try to reevaluate, I'm very appreciative of this moment we're in. And it's an awkward, nuanced balance to have, because my heart aches so much for those individuals who've lost loved ones, and those individuals who've had to go into a deep quarantine because of the contacts they've had, or who have illness that still goes on because of this disease or pandemic. But then on the other side, I'm extremely thankful that I get a chance to spend this much time with my family and my children, because in 2016, during the Trump Clinton election, I did 265,000 air miles, right? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, every day.
Right.
I was playing. I was living out of suitcases everywhere, going here, there, everywhere else. So to be able to do things like spend time with you guys from right here, it's just it feels good to be able to raise my children and be home. It feels good, and all I want to do is, you asked me my future, and my future is pretty clear for me.
Okay.
So in a long time, my future is, I just want to really be a good husband and a good father, and those are the priorities. And my wife understands that I feel as if I owe something to service, and we'll evaluate those things as they come. Right now, my job is to make sure that Kamala Harris, day in and day out, is as prepared as she can be.
Right.
My job is to, yesterday when she gave that amazing speech, my input to Senator Harris was breathe. So I just,
So I have to ask you about it, because it just happened 2 days ago, or yesterday. And I know you were her co-chair when she was running for president, and you have been from day one, one of her biggest cheerleaders. So I think you said this on CNN last night. I know I thought about it. Now you got 2 daughters. I've got 2 daughters. They see what they can be, but it's about to get choppy, right? So talk more about Kamala just for a minute. And just you got to give us a couple of minutes of the euphoria that people are feeling.
So, I mean, she's a special person, and like I know her very well. We talk on Saturdays and Sundays, and she calls me on Saturdays and Sundays because she does her chores. She usually calls me when she's ironing, like
okay,
on like between 10 and 12, and we'll chat, and I'll send her pictures of my kids, and she'll tell me, tell them Auntie Kamala is here for them whenever. It wasn't difficult for me, because supporting Black women is something I'm inclined to do. And let me just tie that into my family history.
Yep.
My father always taught us that the movement wouldn't have been anything without Fannie Lou, without
Ella Baker. Ella Baker. I named my daughter after Ella Baker.
So yeah, and so for me it was an easy jump to support a sister running, a Black woman running for president. Like, why would I not? Like, I didn't understand the reticence. I didn't understand. But at the end of the day, God orders our steps, and Senator Harris, Kamala, is where she needs to be and where she can do great work. And, her smile is infectious. Her talent is unmatched. She's brilliant. My wife, Ellen, you like Kamala, don't you?
Love her.
Love her. My daughters, I mean, just think about October 7th, I think, is the debate day. I'm not sure. I think it's 7th. I get my dates confused. October 7th, I think, is the debate day. But I mean, even yesterday, 2 days ago, you sitting in front of a TV with your daughters, and you have black or brown daughters, and here's this amazingly strong, beautiful woman that walks out, and she's walking out beside Joe Biden, and she can be, she's going to be the woman who is the highest ranked elected official in the history of the United States. It's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
We got to do our job now. I mean, that's the point. We got to do our job now.
Go vote. Everybody's got to go vote. Okay. So I know we'll be getting close to getting some questions from the audience, but I also want to talk a little bit about you mentioned women and maternal health and the importance. Say a little bit more about health equity, because I mean it's COVID-19 still, right? Like we're dealing with racial unrest.
So I mean, what do you want to know about health equity? So this is the health equity is a thing, as the kids say. It's a thing, right? And so let's look at health equity through the prism of my life. What I wrote about first is that I grew up in a town where we lost our. If you have a heart attack and you got to travel 30, 45 minutes to the nearest hospital, right? You're going to die. I mean, that's just where I grew up.
Right.
Not having access to quality care. And so a lot of my friends who were to the left of me, and a lot of my friends who are in the arena of politics, they want to talk about public options, and they want, which I agree with wholeheartedly. They want to talk about Medicare for all. And I'm like, well, I hear that. And I want to get there. I'm more concerned about access because I grew up in a community where we didn't have access to anything, right? And so when you talk about health equity, you have to talk about access. That's kind of first. Second, equity. My wife almost died in childbirth, right? So you got to talk about African-American female mortality. Third, I was actually on a call earlier today with the company I represent, talking about diabetes and the impact of how we have a crisis of amputations in this country. It's something I didn't know. And it's a crisis that affects who? Black and brown individuals, right? And it's the more expensive treatment.
That's right. That's right.
So talking about this crisis, talking about it being the more expensive treatment, et cetera, all of these things kind of build into that. And the last thing I said I would have three, so this is four, is that, my little girl got a liver transplant last year, and almost a year, and we went through a transplant system that was completely broken.
Wow.
So, understanding that because we had access to means, our resources were more available. And, I write about that. I'll flesh it out a little bit in more books. I have 2 more books coming out pretty soon. Not soon, but next summer, I'm excited about this one. Next summer, it's actually due in 2 days. We get an extension on that, but we do in 2 days. I have a children's book due in 2 days. I'm looking forward to that. And then I have another adult book coming out in 2022. So in 2022, we will discuss more about Sadie's issues and George Floyd and Donald Trump. We'll dig more into that than we did in My Vanishing Country. But the children's book is going to be a powerful book for young people of color, whether you don't have to look at somebody purple or red.
Right.
Look at somebody black and brown and kind of want to be like them when you grow up.
We love that. All right. Okay. I think we got some questions from the audience. Okay, here we have one. What do you do now to balance the weight of the torch? Where did that courage to face your truth come from?
That's a tough question. As we talked about, I talk about anxiety in this book a lot. So that's a tough one. I'm gonna go to my table of contents here.
Review some of those chapters.
Yeah, chapter 8, page 151. I talk about anxiety a lot. This book, it meant a lot. I read this thing so much.
Yeah, I reread chapters. Yeah.
So coping is tough. It's a 24-hour thing. I give my all to Black people every day. I give my all to Black folk. I do. I give my all to us. I give my all to this country. because I firmly believe in not what we were or what we are, but what we can be. One of the things that's most amazing about being Black in this country is that we will never lose our sense of faith, and we never lose our sense of hope, because everything we've had was stripped from us, and many times that's all we've ever had. I cannot tell you this job is not exhausting, though. It is. It's tiring. I feel last night I was on till 11. I woke up this morning, got on at 6.
Yeah.
Story. It's hard. I was just on before I came on. I was on it.
Never a dull moment.
Yeah, I was on about 6:15 talking about birtherism and all these other things. And so you ask a good question. For me, I always try to become a part of something larger than myself. I have 2 amazing twins and a 15-year-old. I have a partner in crime and my wife, Ellen. And I remember what my mother went through and my mother went through. My mother was a part of the first integrating class of schools in Memphis, Tennessee. My dad was shot in the massacre. It was so much that I can't give up. And in the words of the great American poet Christopher Wallace, AKA,
yes, sir, Big Small.
Yeah, you sleep when you die. And so for me, I'm going to give my all, and I'll let everybody else write what my obituary may be.
All right. Here's another one. What advice would you give to young Generation Z students as they take the torch and seek to take their place as the change makers in our society?
So there are a couple of things in that question that I love. First, I love the fact that you said take the torch. Take the torch.
Yep.
Yeah, people. Old Black folk never give away anything.
Yeah, you gotta
be. Teddy gonna be 80 years old talking about he still chair the Urban League. Man,
you're right.
It's gonna be that. No, you better get at. You better cultivate somebody. You know,
you gotta raise the next generation. You're right.
Black folk, we don't build lines of succession. So I appreciate you saying take the torch. The first thing I tell you, Generation Z is a horrible name. It's got
okay. All right, Generation Z, y'all gotta come up with something else.
Yeah, y'all gotta. Generation Z sounds like the end of time. You're such an amazing generation. Just 2 years ago, we were worried about Generation Z eating Tide Pods. I don't know if you remember when that was a thing. And now they're on the forefront of multi-billion-dollar gaming industries and changing gun laws in this country. And so I'm all for them. Every ounce of change we've ever had has been because of young people, from the women's suffrage movement to gay rights movement to Black movement for civil rights, etc. It goes on and on and on. It's always been young people.
Right.
Old people don't lead movements. It's just not their thing. It's always been young people. And so my advice is to always dream with your eyes open, always keep going forward. And this is my advice that drives parents, teachers, administrators crazy. Never, ever, ever ask for permission.
There you go. Forgiveness. Absolutely.
You only ask for forgiveness. You never ask for permission. Follow your gut. You never know what's going to happen. You might change the world. You know, in the words of Andre 3000, you know, you sometimes you shoot for them. You know, you shoot for the stars. You never know. You shoot for the moon, you hit the stars.
Yeah, you're a son of the dirty South.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, let's see. What do you say to people who feel rightly so that the Democratic Party is not progressive enough and are threatening to sit out the election?
No, I mean, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear about not being progressive enough. But this is a battle for the soul of this country, to use a line from Joe Biden. Yeah. You know, this election, you got to vote like your life depends on it. There are 150,000 people who died. There are 20 million people out of work.
Right.
If you sit out of this, you're voting for Donald Trump. So anybody who wants to sit out of this election who's watching this, just know you're a Trump supporter. I'm gonna get you a MAGA hat. Text me your address. I'll mail it to you. There really aren't, like, I hear you. The Democratic Party is not progressive enough. That's fine. But there is a realization about pragmatism, and there's a realization about understanding where we are and how we get to where we want to go. The best example I can give you is John Lewis.
Okay.
John Lewis in 1963, during the March on Washington, was delivering a speech, and he was talking about police brutality. He was actually saying the SNCC would not endorse or support the Civil Rights Bill. And what happened was not only did the attorney general, but the president heard about his remarks. They got copies of his speeches, and Baynard Reston and King, Abernathy all set him down and said, we have to change your speech. We have to tone it down because this is
That's right. That's facts. That's right. They changed it.
Yeah, they did. Which is kind of weird in the totality of his life. But you understand that sometimes the arc of justice it bends, but it doesn't bend quickly. You have to be in the game. And the crazy thing about people who want to sit out the system is I would never. I used to pull people when I was an elected official. I would pull your voting record, not to see whether or not you voted for me or against me, but to see whether or not you voted at all.
Right. Did you vote? Sure.
If you didn't vote, why are you getting a meeting with me?
That's right.
I mean, that don't make sense. Why am I entertaining somebody that don't vote?
Right.
You could vote for my opposition. You could vote for a third party. You could vote for Kanye West to beat me.
Right. But vote for somebody, something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not to say that you're not, to say that we are in a pandemic that's killing Black and brown people, to say that we're in a pandemic that is siphoning away at very large rates the wealth of Black women and Black people in particular from their small businesses, to say that we're in a pandemic that will keep us from watching college football.
Right. Come on. Of all things.
To say that we're in a pandemic and now we actually have a Black woman at the top of the ticket and we want to say that we got some other reason not to support, I'm going to let y'all ride on that. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I'm going to keep making sure that Biden and Harris is over this hump. Good
deal. Okay. I think that we're going to hear again from Kama Pierce.
I hope so.
Kama, you want me? Come on. You back?
I know. Hit that mute button. You are. That was wonderful. It's like being a fly on the wall in your conversation. I have to ask one question because, and Bakari and I, we both have law degrees, so we know what it's like being African American with a law degree in this country, which those numbers is staggering as well. But you have a very unique upbringing because your father was an ex-con, right? And you talk about the poverty that you lived in as a child. He's a brilliant man, but because he was wrongfully accused, it was hard to get hired. And with the disproportionate men, it's off with Black men being convicted and then trying to get out. It really hurts the Black family. It hurts Black men in this country. It keeps us behind economically. I mean, have you thought about, how do we reform this system? Because it is just another way to really help us from progressing.
Well, that's a loaded question. So
it is.
It's a question about criminal justice reform. It's a question about unraveling mass incarceration. And at the end of the day, we have to understand that the kind of mass incarceration as a whole, the totality thereof. We have to start at how do we fund early childhood education, right? Because we know that if we give people money when they're 3 years old, the likelihood of those kids progressing and doing well is a lot higher. The best rate of return you can get on a child is when they're 3, right? We can talk about the kind of cradle to stage pipeline. That's what we call it. So, you have a cradle to stage pipeline, and there are a number of kids who kind of falter in between because it's not that they don't qualify to go to college, but college right now is a luxury. It's not an opportunity. So how do we make sure that they have the ability to go further in life? When you talk about mandatory minimum sentences or allowing judges to have the leeway to sentence as they feel appropriately, which I wholeheartedly believe in. I'm not a big fan of mandatory minimums. When you talk about the fact that Democrats or whomever should have a discussion more and more intently on who we put on the federal bench. There's so many things we can talk about. When you talk about defunding the police, when you talk about and defunding the police doesn't mean that when you call law enforcement, they won't show up to your house. What it does mean is reprioritizing the funding so that a lot of these dollars go to things like mental health support. A lot of these dollars go to things like ensuring that there's summer jobs programs or co-curricular activities. So when you ask a question like that, the gamut is wide open. And one of the things that I would challenge people to do is reimagine the way that we treat law enforcement in their interactions with communities of color in this country today.
Love it. Yeah. And, both of you men are in a position in this community to work towards that. So I am going to challenge both of you because it's a very important problem and it's a very important issue. And, it's all hands on deck. So thank you for that input. Thank you for your time, both of you. I'm going to do my little Levine Museum closing here. First,
let me say thank you before you kick me off the screen.
I'm not kicking you off at all. You're going to end this with me. So I'll give you that minute. But we're a nonprofit. So, I got to do my nonprofit stuff.
Your nonprofit stuff, but I want to say thank you and I want to help you raise more money. So do your nonprofit thing and then I'll be right here.
It's coming right back at you for raising money. Because, first of all, everyone needs to go out and get your book. Okay. So this book is amazing. We cannot wait for your next books that you're working on. It is a wonderful read. And if you haven't gotten it, it's also important to, support local. So, please go to parkroadsbook.com. They've carried extra copies for all of us tonight because Bakari's with us, and, support your local bookstores during this pandemic. And another area of support that you can support the museum, but also support a Black-owned company is with our No Justice, No Peace t-shirts. They are prepared for us by a Black-owned company, the McFry Fresh Printing Company. And actually, when we do leave this screen, we do have a little video about the preparation of those shirts. And, that message, No Justice, No Peace, is very powerful. It also refers back to our exhibit that we had 4 years ago with the unrest that occurred here. And so, Bakari, we are so appreciative. If you'd like to, we know that you're supportive of the Levine and the Gant and a lot of local organizations. I want to give you the floor to say something if you want to help us raise money, because I'm always down for that.
Well, no, I just want people to know that I'm going to give $1,000 to Levine tonight. And I want to say thank you for all that you all have done and giving me this opportunity.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
It's not a lot in the larger spectrum of what we do, but Ellen and I want to make sure we contribute to your efforts. Your husband is an amazing man. Teddy, thank you so much.
Oh yeah, no problem. Happy to be part of it.
We just support the community and we want people to continue to do well. And so we challenge. I know there are people watching, especially from the Business Council, and I want them to give to Levine. You didn't have to reach out to a Black author, but you did. And so on behalf of me, the book's doing well. And so
yes, it is.
I can do this for you. So I feel good about it.
And look at the audience. I'm shocked, right, Bakari? I did not know that was coming. So we so appreciate that. And we're here for you always. We're here for your families and we're here for the community. So we appreciate that support. And in closing out, one of the things that touches me about both of you men, because I know both of your wives, and the support that you give them. They are strong, intelligent Black women, but we can't do it. You mentioned my husband. We can't do it without, you men with us by our side. The struggle is real. And you, on page 192, I even know the page, you quoted my favorite author, Zora Neale Hurston.
Of course.
And their eyes are watching God, right? That is my saying. When things are heavy, I'm like, with a mule of the world, and so you touch my heart there. She's why I became an English major. And so I thought it'd be appropriate that I close out with another quote from that book when she said, there are years that ask questions and years that answer. And I want to challenge all of us watching this tonight to ask yourself, what year has 2020 been? And how are we going to proceed from here? Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Thank you, Bakari, for the donation. Thank you, Teddy, for your leadership and, for the Urban League. And thank you just for being supportive.
Everybody go vote.
Go vote. You vote.
And I got to do this, Bakari.
Y'all
it's not the same you.
We can do that.
Our graduates are doing way too much. I hope y'all vote.
Right, 100%.
You don't need to
hang up now. Bye.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.